right, 7 o'clock. We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Aiken.
Here.
Harness.
Here.
Lee.
Here.
Scarborough.
Here.
Kenworthy.
Here.
Smiles.
Okay. Go through our items here. The minutes, what we've done in the past to review them and then make changes to them. If anybody has an objection to that, we'll go through that. All right. Public hearing.
Jim, in the resolution you have after the conclusion of that public hearing, you've got the votes already recorded as they were recorded in the previous vote.
I saw that.
I was just thinking that.
And I had already cleaned out. So I'll get it done.
Okay. Because the vote will have to be taken again, I'm sure. The vote could subsequently change.
I'm sorry, I plagiarized the previous one. I just forgot to strike that.
That's why we're here to work session.
What are you looking at?
Yeah, what page?
Packet page 33.
What cat's that?
Well, it starts on 33.
Yeah, page 35, the vote is recorded as the previous vote back in June when we had the first public hearing. But we're going to have to revote after this public hearing to figure it out. And the vote could change depending on the public input.
Moving along here, our agenda items. Settlement agreement.
Were we made aware of the final tallies of that in closed session last month? Or will we be made aware of that final tally?
We were.
Yeah, it's been a couple months. There's been a delay. Daytime Playtime has simply not endorsed the settlement agreement. They were expecting a loan from which proceeds they would be paying the amount. And last I heard, they were expecting the loan to come through, but hadn't actually received the funds yet. So by next Monday, I should know whether they're going to renege on this agreement or not.
Yeah, I think if we're going to make an agreement, if we're going to make the agreement, then we need to have a date of payment, not an open-ended agreement that they can withhold forever.
Yeah, normally when
Switched around.
we do an agreement, it's expected that people will sign it within a reasonable period of time, or well, outside of the realm of a reasonable period of time at this point. So we'll bring it to a head by next week.
Okay. Resolution for a special election.
Also, my Honorable Mayor, this is this language before us, proposed charter amendment that would be put to the voters for their approval to create a staggered four-year term.
Mr. Mayor, I would also add that we have, at the will of the council, we've put this as a survey up on our Facebook page as well as on the town's website. And we also included, Jen has done an email blast. We are getting feedback. I'm hoping actually to bring some of the results of that feedback to you all by Monday. Just with the holidays and everything, we want to give a little bit more time to see what we get. The only thing I would say is, like, as we move forward, obviously you can get some feedback from people who are not technically residents of the town. So it's more just to kind of give us a general idea on which direction. I would still suggest that we do move forward with the resolution just to make sure we don't miss any deadlines for the to get it as a referendum. I'm sure you could always put
All right. These surveys, is there a place for them to put who they are or their address or anything?
We didn't do that. We were just, I think it was our impression just to get a general idea.
Okay. Just
with regard to, yes. I mean, what I did was I basically crafted background on how we arrived at this and what the town was looking at doing. Basically said, yes, I believe staggered terms are good for the future Haymarket. No, I think we should keep it the way it is, or I don't know, and left room for any suggestions.
Got it. Okay. All right.
one of the things that's been brought to my attention on that from a couple of people is not necessarily the staggered terms and the 4-year terms on the council, but it was suggested that the mayor's term stay at 2 years, and that also, if we're going to go with 4-year staggered terms, that there ought to be consideration given to possibly enforcement of some sort of term limits. So just throwing that out there, I'm not sure if I have an opinion on either, but that's some of the feedback that I have heard from people that have made comments about it when I was sitting here at town hall, and they came in and they said, I got that notice the other day about the survey or whatever. So I don't know if you guys want to discuss that at all and have that amended in this potential draft resolution.
What's your feelings on that, Brian?
Well, I was speaking, Mr. Mayor, so I'll continue, had a dramatic pause. So, quite honestly, the person who brought up the term limit idea just thought that it made kind of sense if you're going to go for 4 years, that maybe you're restricted to 8 years total. And the same person had concerns in that the mayor is a different part of the figure of the political body. And it may make sense to have a new leader delineated every 2 years and have the main body be more of a rooted body. So there's not, there's more opportunity for turnover and new leadership. That was the concerns that were given to me.
Okay. Brian?
I think it's something you all should seriously discuss. There's various different jurisdictions. It really depends on what kind of style of government you all really want to do moving forward. But there'd be various pros and cons to either or. But I think it's something you should definitely discuss. And with the idea of the term limits, that has been something that in initial feedback we've heard. Now, we did actually, when we advertised it, we included the term limits, which was hindsight even on my part when I wrote it. But, it was something that you all should consider. If you're going to go to 4-year staggered terms for the town, maybe it makes sense to say that you'd only allow no more than 8 years total. Typically, small towns don't have that luxury because it's a lot of times it's about can you get more people to run, and that's the reason why a lot of times in smaller towns, you don't have term limits because there's a chance you might not have anyone who will run. In which case, if you've said that you've capped them at 8 years, that person can't run even again if they're willing to serve another 4 years. So it's got its definite pros and cons. But I think you all should discuss it.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I have not exhaustively researched the question of term limits, but it strikes me that the term limits we have in Virginia are in the state constitution. And the state constitution also lists the qualifications for office. And qualifications for office are just that you be a voter in the district where you're running from, and that you be of the requisite age to serve in office. So to add an additional, for the General Assembly to add an additional qualification for office, i.e. that you haven't served more than 2 previous terms, could be a violation of that. Like I said, I haven't researched that issue, but it strikes me that that's something that if we're seriously considering that, we want to get a definitive answer on before we present this to the General Assembly.
Are we aware that any localities actually do this, or that they differentiate the mayor's term versus? Are you aware of?
I can't think of any off the top of my head, but I would not go so far as saying that it doesn't happen. Because if you're going off a traditional, if you go off more like a council management form of government, the mayor it really depends. They basically help run the meeting, but then other councils, they'll elect 7 council members, and then they can still have the mayor. The mayor is kind of is much more honorary, but they're part of the body, so to speak. There's so many different ways to set it up. I think it's plausible, but I'm not saying that would be a route you'd have to go.
Yeah, I kind of go back to your original thought that even going down this road, because the fact that we flip every 2 years, we never have a chance to get any major projects sort of done. Yeah, it's always you're re-looking at the term every 2 years, so there's never that continuity. Correct me if I'm wrong, that was the thought of trying to move us forward, was to get this continuity and this.
Correct. Under your all's current system, I would have to say that it would make sense for the continuity and for vision and goals of the community. But with that same regard, it really just depends, once again, how do you all want to be set up?
Right. Okay, all right. Was there another?
Yeah, I had asked Martin if you could find out what our deadline was when this first came up.
Right.
To get this to the Prince William County Voter's Office to get it on the ballot. Did we find that answer?
Yes, it is the second week in February.
So we could theoretically push this back one more month.
You could.
For the sake of researching the other topics that have been brought up, and for the sake of getting more information from the polls that they've gathered and the fact that it's a holiday season, et cetera, any disagreement with continuing to table this until the February meeting, given that that gives us plenty of time to act upon it and then push it forward to Prince William County?
We'll go around the room. Steve?
I don't have a problem with tabling it for decision, but if we have more information, it'd probably be worth discussing it further at next week's meeting. If we table, I'm not sure, can we discuss it, or does it just move to the next meeting?
We can discuss it and then table it. My
Okay.
argument
That
would
would
be
be my-
not vote on it until we're fully informed and fully researched any concerns that come up as part of the community's, input. I know that Jen has had people walk up here to town hall, walk in the door, and give her feedback on it.
Right.
And I'd be interested to hear the feedback that not only what I've overheard, but also what the clerks may have heard, what Brian may have heard, what someone may email back based off the survey. And, compilation of all that between now and Monday, and time for us to digest it between now and Monday, I just don't think that it's proper. So I have no problem with us continuing to discuss it on Monday, but on Monday, I would prefer that we take the action to table it until February, whatever the date is.
I don't have a problem with that, as long as we can continue to discuss it Monday.
Yeah, we can't table it tonight anyway. Today's the worst thing.
Okay. Further thoughts?
Do that.
As well, yeah.
Yeah, we still need more information, and other than that, should be tabled.
All right. Organization assessment. Mr. Henshaw, we, of course, lost you there for your vacation. Something that we were still looking at, gathering information. I'm not sure if we're prepared or we're prepared to have anything to present.
As far as I know, I've been following council's lead on this one. That is, until you all say that we really want to go for it. I haven't done anything more than what was originally talked about. It's my impression that we're going to kind of hold off on that for right now. If council would prefer otherwise, I'll be happy to look into it and get some more detailed information on about those various different consultants or firms that could offer the services.
Yeah, because I guess I remember our last meeting that we were putting it off to gather more information. So, and
I think a lot of that information, Mr. Mayor, was supposed to come from you, sir, since this was your idea. I think council directed the questions more to you than the town manager, in that what is it, in fact, that you want to gather from said organizational assessment, and what are you hoping to learn? And so the question was not for Mr. Henshaw, it was for you, sir.
we were working together and getting this information. So
It seems like you're leaning on him quite heavily.
Well, yeah.
I guess I'm still asking the question, what are you hoping to learn?
we're hoping to look and see, where we do have duplication, where we might be able to improve on. To think that we never had one, and that other localities have this done and benefit from it, save the taxpayers money, then it would be a benefit to the town.
Duplication where and benefit from what? Can you elaborate a little bit more on what you're hoping to find that we may or may not be currently duplicated? Do we have,
Well, that's-
are you looking to find out whether or not we have too many police officers, whether or not we have too many town staff, whether or not we... What are you hoping to... What's your whole overall assessment?
It's an overview. If you've never seen one...
Well, I've seen one. I'm asking what you're hoping for.
Well, I'm hoping to do the exact same thing as the people of the town of Farmville did, and other localities like Daniels Dumfries that have one done as well. So those localities benefit from it. I think we benefit from it. So,
Why don't you forward what you know about those two localities and their assessments that they have? Why don't you forward those back to council so the council can review and figure out what you're looking at? ascertain.
Yeah, and I'll also review my notes from when we last spoke about this, so that way we can make sure we're going down. But obviously, we're not prepared, so it will be pushed off.
Apologies, that was,
Yeah,
that was
that's
my understanding, so.
not a problem. Okay.
Can we get that information forwarded to us by Monday, though? You may have. I asked if we could be forwarded again. Unfortunately, we get a bunch of emails these days.
Now we're good to our events contract. I think we had some revisions here, obviously, went back and forth, and I asked this to be put on the agenda so that way we could actually vote on it.
We're voting on accepting the contract that we've already directed our attorney and our town manager to negotiate.
Correct. That's correct. I think it's important that we've heard discussion about this, we've heard support, we've heard opposition, and it's, as we do other contracts, I think it's very, it'll be transparent of us to make sure that it's open and looks at how we proceed to accept this.
So you're proposing that in the future, we should change our policies and procedures to project for every directive we give the town manager and the attorney bring back to us so that we can actually formally accept any contract that they negotiated on our behalf, given the powers that they're given?
Mr. Tobias.
Or just this one?
Mr. Tobias, before I put my signature on it, I want to make sure that the council is in full support, and by having this brought and having us vote on it, that will give me the assurance to sign this.
Could you answer my question? My question, sir, was whether or not you're proposing to modify the procedure that we've implemented in the past and have implemented successfully in the past. And are you hoping that we do this for all contracts going forward?
I'm not saying for all contracts going forward, but for this particular situation, I think that it's prudent.
We'll have to check our other policies and procedures to see if that is prudent.
Yeah. So, any further
Just typically we
discussion?
assign contract negotiations to our town attorney and our town manager, and we give them the marching orders, and they execute as such, which in my reading an overview of this contract addendum, it appears that they have successfully negotiated on our behalf the termination clause as well as the termination clause on behalf of both the town and the termination clause on behalf of the promoter. I believe that those were the two last items that were up for discussion. And by putting this on the agenda, I'm just curious, now, technically the contract is invalid after tomorrow because the contract runs out tomorrow. And so therefore, on January 6th, they don't have a contract for an addendum. So I'm just curious as to what our legal standing is there. If the contract dies while an addendum is in the works, the contract is dead.
In open session, sir, have we voted on this at all? So this has all been executive closed session.
And we don't vote on contracts like this in open session typically.
Well, we have a contract that we're willing and able to sign at this point.
Kind of the same thing with the daytime settlement agreement. Martin felt needed to come forward with the vote because it is all closed session negotiations and discussions.
My concern is that you have a contract that has a contract end date of tomorrow. If there's I understand that there's a work in progress, and I understand that the calendar is what the calendar is. But if I were another vendor or another promoter, and I came to the town on January 2nd and said, I want to put in for putting on the town event, I understand there's no current contract. Because the contract, we're a public body, our public contract expires tomorrow. I'm concerned that that's a problem, and that puts us in a sticky situation with our current promoter.
Well,
You can set my mind at ease, but those are my concerns.
the first thing I would look at is that the previous contract from 2011 was signed by the mayor. So to me, that indicates that the addendum needs to be signed by the mayor. Now, with any contract, if there's an expiration date, then yes, the contract says shall remain in effect until December 31st, 2013. In this case, the issue then could be raised by somebody that says, yeah, this contract has expired. But the fact of the matter is, the parties intend to have an extension to that contract. Call it what you want. Call it an extension, call it a revival. But it would be within the town's authority to continue that contract. For one thing, you're not governed by the Virginia Public Procurement Act. And for another thing, it's the party's intent control in this kind of situation.
Okay. I mean, what I would suggest is I think you can actually have the kind of the best of both worlds. I think the fair thing to do is in the general contract, I think you will have the ability and given us the ability and authority to go negotiate on your own behalf. We've gotten all the demands that we would want to achieve. I think the best thing you can do is during the Monday regular meeting, you can basically announce that we've entered into a 1-year extension, and basically you're covering the fact that we are going to continue our working relationship with the teacher. So that's what I would recommend. But I think on the standpoint of we do need to sign the contract.
Yeah, I think the contract needs to be signed between now and the end of the day tomorrow.
That's what I'm.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I mean, we can talk about it here at the work session, but I mean, I think that all of our concerns have been addressed. And I don't see any reason as to why not to have the contract signed by whomever it needs to be signed by, and then council can announce its decision effective Monday. Your thoughts, sir?
Oh, wait a minute. First of all, Martin, so it's your opinion that we put, obviously, daytime, playtime to actually vote on this thing. All this stuff was done in executive session. So, I mean, I don't understand why this would even be an issue to vote on it next Monday.
Well,
I'm not sure why we're trying to vote on it.
Wait, please,
Mr. Mayor.
you're out of order.
Shut up.
Jennifer, could you please read the record? Go ahead.
I'm out of order at a work session.
I'm not sure what the question is at this point. The question is, do we need to vote on this on Monday?
Correct.
Yeah. I wasn't here in 2011. I don't know what the procedure was for adopting the contract, the original contract that we're amending. But since it was signed by the mayor at that time, it makes sense to me to have the council approve it and sign, and then have the mayor sign it after approval of council. If you all have a policy that says the mayor can sign this without the approval of council, then I haven't seen that.
Okay. I'm not aware of that, and obviously I wouldn't want to break that policy and procedure. As we go around the table, Mr. Aiken, any comments?
I'm conflicted. I mean, I see both ends of the point that council is. I believe council's made its intent clear in closed session, but I don't know if that's enough. I mean, if this was a simple contract, no big deal, I don't think this would be an issue and it would just be signed. But this is a contract that's been going back and forth, and there's been some heated discussion over the last few months, just like the daytime, playtime one, and those are sort of special exception ones that maybe we need to be clearer on it or something. So I can see both sides of it. I'm not, and it appears that there's no harm in waiting. It appears there's no harm in waiting, so I'd probably lean towards just do a vote and be over with.
I agree, do a vote and be over with. That way everyone's clear as to who wants it, who doesn't, who agrees with it, and who doesn't. That way there's no one can come back later and say anything else.
Really?
I agree.
Mr. Kenworthy? I agree. And Mr. Tobias, any final comments?
I think that I don't necessarily agree with the original statement concerning the other contract, the settlement contract. The only reason I'm going along with that one is because of the fact that we're taking a cut and we're doing a fiscal disservice to the town residents by taking that cut on the monies that are owing to us versus what we're getting paid. This particular contract is not doing any kind of
fiscal disservice to the residents who are essentially our clients. And if we're going to start if we're going to start a process of discussing and negotiating contracts in closed session, which we're allowed to do, if we're going to start a policy of doing that and then instructing our staff and our attorney to negotiate on our behalf based on what they've learned in that executive session, and then come out here and ratify the contract in open session, then we need to do that for all contracts and all leases going forward. Because it doesn't make sense. I don't know how you can necessarily declare this as a special exception. There shouldn't be special exceptions. It should be a policy. Mr. Mayor, you sir are the one who's been eloquently speaking so many times about policies and procedures and you are working with Mr. Henshaw to develop policies and procedures. And so if we're going to develop a special exception, then we just need to develop a policy and procedure. And if that is the case, then any contract going forward should be brought to council after it's been negotiated in good faith by our representatives, and let council review it one last time and adopt it with an A or nay vote in public, as Ms. Catt has said, so that everybody knows where everybody stands on the record. I don't know why you have a problem with that.
Martin, guess the intent of negotiating something in closed session, like the contract, when there is no monetary value, the town makes nothing off of this. Is that something that would actually even carry the privilege to go into closed? I mean, I thought the whole idea was the transparency, and if there's no value.
There's monetary value here. Yeah. We get paid a stipend, and they pay us our police officer for it. There's money involved.
Pay for the work that for service they provide.
Plus, they pay a stipend to the town.
There's a reimbursement.
Plus, there's a stipend to the town. So that's it's monetary value, sir.
Again, I'm asking Mr.
Well, you acknowledge me by looking at me and opening your eyes, so.
You can go into closed session to discuss a number of different things. It doesn't have to be related to money. If the issue is, help me understand again what the issue is here that you're asking about.
Just the fact about it being in closed session for negotiation, this type of contract.
Okay. Well, for any type of contract, if you negotiate something, you give direction in closed session. There are a couple of ways of handling that. One is you could come out of closed session and authorize the manager and the attorney to reach an agreement and execute it within the parameters that you discussed in closed session. That's fine. You can do that. You vote. We know what that direction is, but you may not want to state it in public because then they would tell them what our negotiating position is. That's one way to handle it. The other way to handle it is for us to bring you back to the agreement as we've done here. Since you all did not vote after that closed session to authorize us to enter into an addendum, we're bringing it back to you.
Okay. All right. So no further discussion. We're going on to our next item, the budget appropriation number E.
Further discussion on that. Martin brings up a good point. If council had not come out of closed session prior and instructed staff to negotiate on our behalf, I would argue, it's not in the most recent minutes, but I would argue that we probably had already done that.
Okay. Seeing that it's not, I think we've got a full agreement with council that we're going to vote on next.
Full agreement?
Well,
Majority agreement.
Majority agreement.
Thank you.
So, moving on to our next item for budget appropriations.
Oh, sorry. Then I will ask to add to the agenda item a new policy procedure for all contracts and all events and all stuff.
And make that note to
So
general.
you can add that in. Discussion of, not discussion, but enactment of whatever procedure that we have to enact. If this is maybe the way we want to do it, we're going to do it this way for everything going forward. Okay. As Kat said, to put your name on it.
Well, it sounds to me, if I may, that if we come out of closed session and specifically direct them to do it, we're voted.
Well, I believe we've already done that in this case, Mr. Aiken. I'd have to research the minute book.
Okay.
Good. Our attorney
believes we haven't done that, so yeah, okay.
He doesn't recall us doing it.
We need to look at that.
We've had numerous meetings where I'm sure he doesn't recall all of the minutes of all the meetings that we've ever had.
We can resolve this on Monday. All right,
Okay.
I'm done.
All right. Budget appropriations.
for
Yeah.
comments, sir?
Yeah.
What comments are you looking for there? They're spelled out right there, and we have to do it.
Okay.
Anything else?
Nope.
Okay, then.
Boundary line adjustment.
Just as noted earlier on council packet page 35, that we just need to correct that vote.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Also on page 36, where it says 2013 boundary line adjustment, top should be 2014, and then in the first paragraph it says this agreement should be 2014 again. We'll make this, we can just make those changes by pen and the execute that, so we can make the same copy out of it. But the Board of Supervisors already signed it with the 2013 dates on there, so maybe it makes more sense just to pen those changes in.
Okay.
Do we have an idea of when we're going to schedule the second public hearing?
No,
It's Monday.
yeah, it's Monday for the public hearing. We run.
Oh, I'm sorry.
The
That
issue
is
was
already-
when we hadn't advertised it.
Never mind.
Right.
Okay, moving along, the rail safety grant application.
Mr. Mayor, I'll just comment to this really quick. You do have a memorandum and a recommendation within your budget packet, or in your agenda packets. This key basically out of a lot of our meetings with regard to the quiet zone. We've been working with the FRA and trying to look into creating a quiet zone for the town. During that meeting, we were basically informed that the rail speeds have increased through this area, and we actually are picking up a little bit more traffic too, but that was kind of a side note. So in trying to, we had to do all of our safety numbers. And so to do that, you have to get the rail speeds. You have to do that through Norfolk Southern, which is the primary rail line that comes through here. Norfolk Southern then basically informed us that there needed to be upgrades to some of the other crossings. It was under our impression that you could take get like a safety bump for safety improvements within your quiet zone. However, there still need to be some improvements to each crossing. That we suffered basically a little bit of a setback with that regard, because up to this time it was our impression that all we were going to need to do is invest into signage referring to the quiet zone, and that there would be no treatment. Through doing research, we actually found that there's actually rail safety money out there through the Virginia Department of Transportation to make these improvements. And it's also important to say that with making these improvements, if we go out for the rail safety money, which is there's no match required, to the best of our knowledge, we cannot find anywhere where there is a required match, because VDOT is actually making a big push to rail safety. We basically can apply for the safety improvements, and even if you did make those improvements, it would improve the safety of the railroad crossings, but you still wouldn't necessarily have to move forward with the quiet zone if you didn't want to. You'd basically be making safety improvements to the crossings that are within the town and the surrounding areas. With that being said, the only thing is before you can really make those improvements, you really kind of need to do an assessment of what needs to be improved. Through the resources that we've been able to find through their inventory, there is a good chance that maybe not all the crossings would need complete upgrades to some of the safety equipment. Basically, the safety equipment has to do with more power outage issues and also how the cross gates work.
Okay.
So with that being said, we could potentially have to make an investment of $2,800 to have that assessment done by Norfolk Southern. If we were to successful in getting the grants from Rail Safety, Norfolk Southern would be the company doing the work anyway. They exclusively will not let you get private contractors to work on their rails. So basically what we're looking at is, I'm just saying, I need to know if you want us to forge forward with the Quiet Zone Initiative. To move forward with that initiative, we are going to have to look at making these improvements.
Okay. And so you have a draft motion there with that recommendation. Let's go around the table. Mr. Aiken.
Is it your contention that if we get these grants that we might get this $2,800 back?
No, we would not give
We would not
$2,800.
give the $2,800 back.
The $2,800 would be to have Norfolk Southern come out and do the assessment on the crossings.
And if we got the grants, then it would just pay for
It
whatever.
would pay for
that we
the
have
work
to
that
do.
needs to be done. It's a kind of a catch-22. We could apply for the grants, and we might be successful, but the problem is we don't know exactly what all needs to be done at every crossing.
Right.
We could have that assessment done once we get the grant, but if we didn't cover all the costs, that could make it a little interesting. If we pay the $2,800 now, we can actually include that in our grant application, which might make it a little bit stronger.
I would support spending the $2,800.
Mrs. Hart?
I would not. I like the train. I don't want it going away. Period. Okay.
I'd like to spend it for safety reasons. I'm used to it.
Me too. I love it.
But like it is, like where it is.
Spending the money will only, though, forward the quiet zone.
No.
No.
Spending the money tells us what safety improvements would be needed if we are going to do it. Quiet zone, correct?
Right.
That's what I'm understanding you're saying.
The safety improvements need to be made regardless to bring the crossings up.
By
Right.
whom?
By Norfolk Southern, but they're not, they work. It's just one of those things, it's like they need to be upgraded.
Well, that's my question with all this. The railroads are owned by, I'm assuming, Norfolk Southern, or owned by the, I don't know who owns it, but they run it. These safety improvements have to be made regardless, not just if we put it in the quiet zone, correct?
Correct.
So eventually Norfolk Southern is on the hook for fixing and making these improvements that are required by the Federal Railroad Administration and or VDOT, correct? So it's a matter of them having to do it. Why in the world would we pay them $2,800 for them to tell us what they have to do? Don't they know what they have to do?
That's our same question we've been going around and
I mean,
around.
I think that's ludicrous that they, I mean, first and foremost, it's funny, Martin, when you said that Norfolk Southern won't let anybody use any contractors, that they have to do their own work, which is great because it's all union and that's fantastic. But to me, it seems ridiculous for us to spend $2,800 of the town's money to have Norfolk Southern tell us what they already know, that they have to do anyway, that they have to do at their own dime anyway, just for us to then apply for a grant to pay Norfolk Southern to do something that they have to do anyway. In theory, all I'm thinking is this would potentially speed up the institution of a quiet zone. In theory, if we paid them their $2,800 and if we applied for a grant for $10,000 and then we paid Norfolk Southern their $10,000 that they were going to have to invest anywhere on their own, then we might be able to then put a quiet zone in if that's what we want. But I think a lot of the council doesn't really care about that. That was something that many previous councils had suggested and had looked into, and this has been an ongoing thing, I think, since about 2006. So I would absolutely say no to this, because to me it seems ludicrous that we're paying Norfolk Southern money to do something they've probably already done, just so that we could have the correct information to apply for grants to get money from the state of Virginia to give to Norfolk Southern to do the work that they have to do anyway. To me, that seems like someone's reaching in someone's back pocket and hoping you don't notice you're being pickpocketed. I would just say let Norfolk Southern fix the stupid things the way they're supposed to be and table the whole safety zone, quiet zone thing for now anyway, because to me, that's just stupid for us to spend money. And to spend the state's money.
Finished?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. Mr. Quinn?
In the city of Manassas, when we did the quiet zone, the money that was spent for railway crossing improvements was not money that Norfolk Southern would have had to spend. This was an additional money that the city spent in order to qualify for the quiet zone. If you didn't, there's a formula that you can go to their website and put in data such as the train speed, the number of trains that cross, whether any accidents have occurred at that intersection, and so on, that then kicks you back to a yes or a no answer as to whether you qualify for a quiet zone. If the answer is no, then you can play with the numbers, increase the safety by increasing the safety features. So, for example, if you have an arm that comes down this way and then one on the other side of the tracks, but nothing that comes down 4 quad arms. It's just 2, just for the traffic. People will drive around those. And so one thing you can do is put in 4 quad arms. Obviously, that's more expensive than the 2 quad arms, but it's safer because a surprising number of people will drive around a train crossing guard, which just baffles the mind.
Guilty.
Well, okay.
May or may not put a name mark.
Present company accepted.
A motorcycle.
But so I just want to. Maybe things have changed in the couple of years since Manassas has done that. But I would want to make sure that we understood whether these are things that Norfolk Southern was planning to do anyway.
This is additional safety equipment. What it does is you could go out and make these improvements, which would improve the safety of it. Is it something that Norfolk Southern is going to come out and do, or has it in their plans to do? No. Not until the cross section is just at the point where they have to make those changes. For the most part, most of our crossings are actually in fairly good shape. The history with that, I'm going to make this brief. The history on the quiet zone is basic. Originally, it was looked at just for the 3 crossings that are within the town. Because that actually brought on lots of monetary changes when the quiet zone was really kind of being looked at. It was then expanded to include 7, which then it was changed to basically being the Haymarket Gainesville quiet zone, which is what was being proposed. With the 2 crossings in Gainesville going to above grade, that increased our safety levels, and at that time when they were looking at it, basically was coming down to increase the safety levels. You basically got like a bonus because the safety at 2 major intersections where they have problems increased our numbers to make it viable that you could apply for a quiet zone. With the quiet zone, then basically we were under the impression at that time where really all we would need to do is at this point verify all the safety, have a meeting. We could declare the quiet zone, have to put up signage. Signage wouldn't be that expensive in the grand scheme of things. It seemed like it was a good idea. I think the town reached out to Prince William County. Prince William County said, go for it. That's fine with us. And so essentially this is kind of where we're at. Things have changed a little bit. Basically, these safety improvements are safety improvements that could be made to increase the safety of each crossing, but it's one of those things that's not on the company's list or plan to make eventually these improvements.
But you're also talking about safety improvements made at railroad crossings, not just the 3 in the town, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, I think on Monday I'm going to move to scrap this whole idea, guys, just so you know. I think at this point in time, this council seems to have an opinion that they don't want to do it. Just from the comments that were made through the earlier roundtable.
I don't have a problem with the noise. I've lived with it. I live right next to the railroad tracks, not next to a crossing, but right next to them. They blow the horns all the time. And 16 years, not a big deal. So I'm less concerned about a safety or quiet zone, but I'd still be somewhat interested in pursuing additional safety at crossings within the town, not outside, but within the town. That'd be my only concern.
I'm more apt for natural selection. If you want to go around that, around that barrier, there you go.
I agree, 100%.
All right.
Ms. Mayor, another idea. If that's the direction council wants to go, maybe we could discover whether we can save the $2,800 to be spent by Norfolk Southern and just go for the grants and have those improvements made.
Right.
Is that something that...
But we have to know what improvements need to be made. That's what the whole $2,800 was, right? Was to find out what improvements need to be made, make them safer.
You could always just go for the grants, and if you get the grants,
Yeah, how much money are you asking for in your grant?
well, that's what I'm saying is like you gotta kind of shoot high, but
We don't know what high
we had
is.
talked. Well, one of the gentlemen that works on the subcommittee for the privacy, he's a transportation engineer for Fairfax County, and so we feel confident we can probably get the grants where they need, based upon what they have basically an index on all of their crossings and like what all the equipment, so you can tell which ones are more up to date and which ones are further behind. It's one of those things you could go for the grants because you lose no money and resources doing that. If you get the grant,
You do the best you can with the money you have.
Well, I was gonna say, or at that point, then you can say, well, we only want to assess the 3 there, and
Right.
is that less? You could always go that route if for the sake of the safety of it. But from my standpoint, to me, this one comes down. I like working with our subcommittee. I think we got good people that are on it. But I think it really ultimately still comes down to a council. I think Vice Mayor Tobias brings a good issue to the fact that this was a initiative that was brought up by several councils ago. The only thing I would say is if you want to do in fairness, before you move forward on either, we do have a little bit of a deadline with grants though. Is we could move forward because it wouldn't cost us anything with applying for the grants, and you could schedule just a general public hearing to see if the residents want to quiet them. Or they still want. I'm sorry?
Because advertising for public hearing doesn't cost.
Well, it would, but at least that way you would see if residents still are interested.
I greatly appreciate your comment, Mr. John, but again, on Monday, I'll be striking, moving to strike this from any further agendas for the rest of this council's term.
Hey,
Natural selection being what it is.
and further discussion on that, our historic district overlay.
I would just like to bring up on that, when the ARB went to discuss it and why we basically put some things in that the Planning Commission did not, the reasoning behind with the VDOT change of Route 15 and the widening of that, it is going to make certain areas that were not included more of a focal and a face to our town. That's why the overlay 1218,
Page 47.
page 46 is where I am. At your bottom right, the kind of the smaller triangle where a la carte is, all of that is getting widened, and those warehouses behind it are going to be more of a face to the town. So we wanted to include where that a la carte catering is with the widening of 15, because that is going to be a significant visual into the town, as well as including Century Stair, the building there, because you can see that very clearly from Route 55, Washington Street, and wanting to keep that within that overlay district so that things can be.
Excuse my ignorance, Kat. This should be a color map for the council meeting if possible. And I see the one grayed out building on the second map. Kat, you could help me with the other.
Yes.
These two right here, what you have? Oh, see, that's the one shot right back.
This is what we added, the widening of 15.
Right.
Same with this, because it is very visually seen down Main Street. You can definitely see right into that. And
That's Century Stair right behind Foster's, right?
correct. And the other half of the fairground property, because it is our gateway from anyone coming off 66, that is going to be seen. Whatever is built there is going to be the first thing people see.
Especially with the overpass.
Correct. And so that is why the ARB wanted those 3 things included. We are fully agree with getting rid of all the HOAs in the communities and the warehouse and the industrial. But that was the reasoning behind those 3 ads.
Wasn't there also some discussion at your meeting, or maybe it was the planning commission meeting, about these properties on
The houses.
whatever street that is?
Madison Street.
Madison.
Madison, it
There
was,
was a couple of lots here that someone had some concerns about because they're not covered by HOA.
that must have been the planning commission.
This was-
Did
Yeah,
not.
it was the planning commission. Tasha Sikorsky made a comment about, I think, these 2 lots.
That they bought her property and that she would readily see the size and massing of buildings that were
Right.
different than hers.
Marshawn, were you at that meeting?
Yes.
So the rest of Madison that is included, what was the logic behind not including the last two properties? Do you recall?
There are several buildings that are considered contributing resources to our district, and also a lot of the lots went across the lot, and then the rest were commercial properties. So it's a combination of things.
Say that one more time as to why these two buildings were left out.
Oh, sorry, what, these were two left out? They were neither contributing resources,
North 3 lots.
nor through lots, as seen from Jefferson Street.
Okay, got it.
Where you are.
Kat, you guys had your meeting after the planning commission, or
No,
before?
Yes, they had on the 18th.
We had no problem with Madison Street as it is.
Did you guys communicate your suggested additions to the planning commission? Did you get any feedback?
We did not get feedback.
Ralph was there at the meeting. He provided some explanation of the commissions, but the commission holistically did not respond.
What was Ralph's feedback in regards to the additions to the map?
He understood that the council's charge in April was to go back, look at a smaller central district, and with due consideration of the 4 corridors. And the plan that they put forward to you incorporates those factors. Part of that was all lots contiguous to Washington Street, all those lots outside HOA lands that were along Jefferson Street, and then basically the 2 corners on the west side of town.
Right.
So they felt that leaving out the balance of the fairgrounds as a single parcel, the ordinance reads right now, if you're partially within a district, the whole property is subject to the ordinance. If the lot were to be subdivided, then the property could be viewed differently. But they felt that that was enough of an area as seen from Washington Street to be subject to design controls. Down here, the Planning Commission again felt this being part of the industrial complex didn't need to be subject to it. The ARB felt that they still, because this is the southern gateway, they'd still be able to have some control from the south in terms of a visual gateway north of the railroad tracks. So
Is that one property, or is it multiple? That bottom left,
that is a single parcel owned by the Rose family.
Just the colored portion is a single parcel?
Correct. That's the a la carte building and the 2 gravel lots and the stormwater pond. It's likely part of that will be taken as part of the VDOT project and become a driveway like a parallel road. South of that is the stormwater pond. So what you'll really be reviewing is any aesthetics, any landscaping that's done along there. And then if the a la carte buildings are rebuilt, the town would have review of that building.
Mr. Aiken?
Kat, just to clarify, you indicated that this excludes the HOAs, but it appears that it doesn't exclude HOA homes that border Route 15 Washington Street. And I'm assuming that's because they are the face of the town.
Correct.
Correct.
Okay. All right. I just wanted to make sure I understood.
And same with why including the other piece of the fairground property, being that, yes, it doesn't face Washington Street or 15, but it's what you see along 66 in that first.
Okay.
Would it make sense to everybody else to ask the clerk to ask the planning commission chair to chime in, or the planning commission representative from the council to chime in prior to Monday on the yays or nays, positives and pros and cons against including these 3? Really, it would only have to be the 2. Kind of like Marchand said, that fairgrounds property is already partially included, where they'd be subject to the whole thing. And
Unless it's subdivided.
last I talked to Guy Gravett, he has no intentions of subdividing. But obviously, intentions can change. But anybody have any objection to asking Jen to reach out to Rebecca or Bob to get their input before we take it up?
Not at all.
Can we get photographs of it?
Guys, you're not taking this matter up for a vote on Monday. You are giving the staff direction on how to advertise for a public hearing in February on which matter.
Right, which is why I need input from the people who we originally tasked with putting it together. Because we need to vote on which map to tell you to advertise.
Another objection for that? No.
Yep.
Mr. Kinley?
Mr. Mayor, that's all discussion. I think in terms of It does meet your intent that I think you charged the commission with. I think the larger district with the ARB does include, I think, areas that are a valid review. Those areas that are not covered that by HOA review is Madison Street, Madison Court, and then a small portion of Jefferson Street north of 55. Those areas will be subject to the zoning ordinance. No larger than 3 stories, only a certain amount of lot coverage. You're likely to see Madison Street, I would predict, in the next couple of years. Those are your small ranch homes. Those will probably be, in my mind, probably likely redeveloped, those houses torn down and rebuilt. The houses along Jefferson Street that are not part of this, I imagine, will likely become commercial uses as the fairgrounds develops. And I think the industrial districts, again, will be limited to what the zoning ordinance allows, but in terms of the aesthetics of the industrial park, that's part of the town's history. So I think it's important to note, too, is that part of the question was our larger district defensible? At the time that it was created, it met the standards of the state in terms of how you establish these districts. Smaller district, in terms of if we're worried about being defensible, I think it's defensible. But it is worth noting that once you take these out, they're unlikely to come back in. It's more than just the buildings. Obviously, the buildings together create the town's district. These corridors on either side, there was some debate, well, there's nothing really historic about it. Well, part of the review is to say, what is the aesthetic of that? How does it transition to our historic downtown? So I would think that including these additional areas by the ARB, or I would recommend that those be added or included with the final decision of the council. But I think this is a good compromise to what the goal has been all along. And I think it will be looked upon favorably by the business community and the residents.
So just so I understand, you would recommend that the ARB's plan to advertise that?
Yeah, I would recommend the larger district as suggested by the ARB.
All right. Any other comments?
Just to be clear, I wasn't advertising or soliciting the advertisement either. I just want the input from the people we tasked with this process.
I didn't mean to undermine that.
It sounded like you did, so I won't take offense to it because I like it.
Next item is our parking ordinance.
Mr. Mayor, last month the council directed the commission and staff to look at revising the ordinance. At the time I was consulted on whether we feel it's a tenable timeline. I think the more I thought about it, and based on the commission's discussion, it's probably worth a more holistic view. It's fairly simple to write an ordinance. That's certainly a background that I have. But we're starting to see some renewed interest and actually some legitimate interest in the town in the 2 limitations, redevelopment of town. The 2 limitations are parking and signage. For example, the firehouse just closed on the property. It's now held in private hands. And some of the preliminary discussions we've had about the site is that they can't park it at today's standard. Village Haymarket Square, which is the redevelopment of the Payne Lane property across the street. They presented their plan to the ARB, and again, the limitation was on parking in terms of how much they could yield out of it. In other words, how much create some of the scale that we're looking for. If your parking ordinance is so large, you're not going to get the scale and the size of buildings that you really need to create that streetscape that we're looking for. In terms of the western side of town, the fairgrounds property, I continue to get calls about interest in that property. I think you've already heard there's an interest by Chick-fil-A to come in and locate at the Quarles property. Sheetz, I think, is finally going to submit their application. A lot of this, I think, will benefit from a closer look both at the parking ordinance and on the sign ordinance. With parking ordinances, certainly there are various amount of tools that we can look at. You have in lieu parking fees, where you would pay basically a cash in lieu, but the assumption would be that money would go into an account that's used to build municipal parking. And again, I think we're a unique case in the sense that we have very limited on-street parking. We have no on-street parking along our major corridors. We don't have any municipal parking to date, so most of that is driven off-site. So I think beyond just writing an ordinance is looking at more holistically what will the parking demand need to be for the entirety of the town that's undeveloped. Some more analysis, get some more, I think, certainly beyond my expertise in terms of transportation planning, get some of that third-party insight, and then be able to move forward, I think, would benefit both what we're trying to achieve, would give the development community some assurances of a standard that's based on the current market and the demand for parking, and I think will be a tool in our toolbox that we will not have to revisit for quite a long time if we're done. I think one of the things we're victim to, or one of the things that I've run into I like to say tools in the toolbox. We've tended to Band-Aid our ordinances for quite some time. So as soon as we get ahead in one instance, we come with a parking ordinance problem. We go in another direction, we get into a signage problem. Our zoning ordinance doesn't match our subdivision ordinance. And then we have a comp plan that needs to be updated as well. So I think getting the tools in place, I think will benefit for us in the future. So essentially what the commission has asked is for us to put together an RFP, request for proposals, to take back to them so they can review the scope of work. We certainly felt it was appropriate before we dedicated staff resources to get the council's feedback, and they thought it was a worthy exercise. We'll go back, put that RFP together, and get it to the commission in February, and then we can, based on your direction in February, we can get the RFP to the commission in January, next or 2 weeks, and then bring it back to you in February with your authorization. We'll actually put it out on the street. So, be happy to answer any questions that you have about it.
Any questions around the table? Nope. Anyone know? Bias, no? Okay.
I'm sorry.
Didn't hear you say.
You didn't have a chance. You said bias no. Well, Sean, any idea what a cost would be for this? I mean, obviously that's why you do an RFP, to get bids and solicit interest. Any idea what a preliminary estimate of a cost would be for someone to help us redesign our parking ordinance and do the analysis, et cetera?
Talking to folks that I know in the consultant industry, I think would be anywhere probably $12,000 to $15,000.
And what kind of turnaround could we anticipate as far as once we've hired a firm and got solicited them to do the project and to do the analysis? What kind of turnaround?
I think we would drive that. We would put in our RFP how quickly we need to turn the product around.
Let me rephrase my question. What kind of turnaround would you suggest that we put in your RFP, sir?
I'm sorry, answering your question with a question. Based on the time that we're looking at and the projects we have in the hopper, I would say I'd like to have something within 6 to 8 months. That gets the study done, that gets the ordinances done, gets them advertised, gets them to your table in a form to be ready to be voted on within 6 to 8 months. And that should be right around the time that a lot of these projects will be coming to you for a final vote.
Which then takes it to the next city council.
This will go beyond this council, yes. It will go beyond May. We could try to aggressively bring that back if we needed to.
Yeah, I have no problem with you drafting a request for an RFP. But pending the outcome of what they would say in March or April when they returned, and I'm not sure that this council would be the appropriate council to undertake that endeavor, given the timing of it overall. Given the fact that, if these come back in March or April, then we'd be working on the budget year at that point in time, the end of the budget year at that time. We'd be working on next year's fiscal budget. And, I honestly think that might be an undertaking for the next council to consider as to whether or not they want to go with our archaic parking limits or come to the new times. But I have no problem with you going ahead and working with the commission on an RFP.
Okay, and moving along, our item J, employee recognition. We're working with, I think, Brian and Jen to offer some. Specifically, I was put on this because of some employees that have, I think, gone over and beyond to get some grants, grant monies that have come in. And that's what the reason why I put this as a thing, because I want to.
Which employees on this grants?
For example, my colleague, how much was that grant? Like $300,000 for?
We got one for $275 and then another one for $30.
Right. And this is monies that really weren't allocated or planned when we were putting out our budgets and stuff like that. Right?
No, it was money that the grant became available. We knew we had the cost overrun, so it was definitely wise to go after.
Right. But she successfully got that. Donna recently, a $30,000, I think it's like an IT grant for the police department. So these are things that these employees do. Jen, countless grants that she's done. So I'd just like to publicly recognize them. The reason why it has to be put on the agenda.
Are you thinking a certificate of thank you?
Yeah. So our next item, request of council
My question to Jen and Sherry this afternoon when I read this was, are they going to come back to us in May and ask for 4 more dates? And they said no, that they had made it very clear that we would give them 4 dates and they would pay for any others that they wanted. So as it sits, based on council's directive, I don't have a problem with the 4 dates they've requested.
I do not either, only the verbiage in it says we expect to hold 10 to 12 meetings at the town hall. The dates that are there are just those 4, but I would like it to be stated that they know it is only 4.
Yeah, maybe add a sentence in there, we're requesting to waive the fees for January 11th, February 8th.
Yes, they're like, though we expect to hold 10 to 12 meetings at the town hall this year, depending on its availability, we are requesting waiver for the following 4 dates.
Yeah, and on those dates available.
Maybe when we pass this around, we can make that part of the comments and vote accordingly.
Well, based on those comments, can we get them to give us an amended draft by Monday, Jen? You think you could get in touch with Mr. Hardy?
Sure.
And just have that clarification that Kat had requested?
Thank you.
Any concerns, Mr. Aiken, no? Mr. Barber, Finley?
Yes.
No further comment?
And no further comments.
Do we know how long they're going to be in here? Like, is it an all-day meeting? Is it an hour? Is it 2 hours?
It's 2 hours, approximately 25 minutes.
Does the second Saturday morning of April conflict with Earth Day in April? Anybody know what day
Usually the 20th or 22nd.
Ativa is planning on celebrating Earth Day in town?
That's usually the 3rd Saturday.
Okay.
We'll double check. Sherry's
Got that.
okay on these.
Cool.
Reports, engineers, Ms. Hall.
While constructing the drainage at the Henrica Baptist Church, they did just come across unsuitable rock. That slowed them down along with some of the inclement weather from the sleet and snow. So it has been slow going. It is going. Progress like this throughout the winter is to be expected, to be honest with you. You will have more weather delays and everything, and then the holidays. They are up to Washington Street, however, the inlet that's right next to Washington Street. So while they're on break right now through the 1st, beginning after the 1st, at the end of this week and the subsequent weeks, you will see more work along Washington Street occurring. Because that was the only major off-site work to be done.
I did have one comment. I noticed like the mud, like what was it last week? Just for
I have said something to them already about the mud,
Yeah.
and I can go back and say something again.
being tracked out. I mean,
Exactly. I have been in touch with the VDOT inspectors are the ones that are in charge of making sure that they're not tracking the mud. I've had communications with them already that they're tracking too much mud, and they need to do whatever it is that they have to do, whether it's installing more gravel, whether it's installing a better construction entrance, a wash rack. They are responsible for not tracking that out there. So I will say something again about the tracking, but I will let you know we've already mentioned it to them once.
I think Mr. Price does.
I don't think the delays have been exceptional, but they built in a little delay time in their forecast of completion.
Their schedule is, they went ahead and maxed out the time, but the thought process has been all along that they'll be able to make the date. And one thing I mentioned at the last council meeting, this is a fixed contract end date. And there is a penalty for every day that they're late. If there is an extreme circumstance, a major blizzard, a hurricane, acts of war, they can ask for a time extension then. But they cannot ask for time extensions due to delays that they cause because they're not working. And they cannot ask for delays due to normal rain and snow. I'm just...
North and south or out of the
The
The letter we received last week was a bit threatening. I don't think we're going to war over it. We'll find out on January 1st.
Terrorism stuff. Anything extreme that no one could foresee and is not a normal weather event.
Right.
They can ask for a time extension. They have 10 days within the date of the event to ask for that as
Right.
well. So everybody's still assuring me, yes, they are going to make the contract.
Cool.
Which is?
August 29th, which is the Friday before Labor Day.
Go ahead, I'm sorry, continue with your report. Do you have anything?
Were there any other questions on the enhancement project? Okay. On to the VSMP Authority. I've spoken to you about this before. Brian and I met with Prince William County. This is something being mandated by the state that the counties and the cities and the MS4 towns become a Virginia Stormwater Management Program Authority. Since we were not an MS4 town, we had the option of whether or not we wanted the county to do it for us. Brian and I met with the county, and one of the things that they told us is that if they incur any cost that they don't recover from fees, they will charge the town anyhow. And so I was like, well, there's no cost savings really to the town. One of the thoughts was, well, would there be cost savings if we just turn the program over to the town? So Brian and I, we had done some talking, and due to the fact that I don't see how there could be a cost savings to the town by turning it over. There's not that many large properties left to be developed, and then we could go ahead and charge the fees and recover the fees to help cover the cost of the program. We're moving forward with submitting the next application, which is January 15th. Yes.
What are the fees to become
I'm sorry?
What are the fees that we would incur for someone, i.e. yourself, I believe, to become a Virginia Stormwater Management Authority representative?
The state regulations have set out a fee schedule for reviews for
The fees for us to become an authority. I'm assuming there's training,
yes, there would be training
certification, some
and
sort of coursework.
certification.
Is there a fee or is that free?
That is not free.
That's my
And
question.
normally and that I've not researched. I'll be honest with you, even if we were, because that's something I would do as part of the site plan reviews, and we have new regulations kicking in at the same time on July 1st, that would be training I would be asking the town to reimburse me for, whether or not we turn the program over or not. Because as a site plan reviewer, as your site plan reviewer, that is information that I need to know, because even if you turn that aspect over to someone else, I need to be aware of what's happening and what the new laws and regulations are.
Would it not be appropriate? Well, first and foremost, I'd like to know what the costs for application are going to be. Because you're saying, you're making a definitive statement that there's no cost savings. There is a cost savings because we don't have to incur any cost ourselves directly unless or until the fees exceed what is collected by Prince William County. So therefore, there is a cost savings in not paying you to go to class. Not saying I don't want you to go to class. I'd like to know what the real application fees will be for us to get you certified to do so. Secondly, I'd like to know whether or not it's possible in our plan review fees schedule that we have now for us to announce that any fees paid, any fees incurred by the town for this stormwater management review that aren't paid directly to Prince William County, we will collect from the developer, from the landowner, in that, so that it will be a pass-through fee. I don't think it's right for us to pay a fee for development that a developer's, I'm not sure how Prince William County wouldn't charge themselves enough anyway, but I wouldn't think that it would be appropriate for us to pay a fee for development and stormwater management done.
Well, I will say that the fees, Prince William County does not set the fees. This is something that the state is setting what the fee schedule is. And actually, as a small town, we have the opportunity, that was one of the things that Prince William County pointed out to us, is that as a small town, we can actually go to the Water Control Board and say, hey, we want to be able to charge a higher fee than what you mandate, because we don't have the full-time personnel that Prince William County has. But that is, I will definitely look at what you're talking about in terms of the application fees and separate training fees. Although, as I mentioned, I would still, even if we were not to become a VSMP authority, I would still ask to have that training as your site plan reviewer.
Before you ask, I think you'd tell us how much, right?
I'm sorry?
Before you would ask us, I think you'd let us know how much you're asking for, right?
Absolutely.
Right. And again, my other concern is if the fees are stated by Virginia, I find it a bit odd that Prince William County can incur a fee that's higher than what they're allowed to charge. And
how that would be then pushed back to us versus how we would, how we could not necessarily make part of our application process, hey, FYI, Virginia says Prince William County should charge you $5,000. If Prince William County charges us $5,500, you're going to pay the $500. I would think that common sense to me says that should be allowed, whether state law says that's allowed or not.
And that would be something I would.
Right, so those are the questions I would like to try to have answered by Monday if possible.
Two follow-ups to that, two of the things that Prince William County pointed out is that they charge their residents a stormwater management tax that they do not charge the town of Haymarket residents. So that is one way. They are also recovering fees that the standard permits are not covering. And so that's not something they would be. They can't come in and say we're going to charge. As far as I know, they can't come and say we're going to also charge the Haymarket residents the stormwater management fees. The other thing that he pointed out is that there are sometimes things like lawyer letters where someone is not going through enforcement. You're having to go into the enforcement side. That lawyer letters are not covered by the permits that these contractors are pulling. And so if they incur a fee to write a lawyer letter, that would be something they would pass on to the town. And that would be something the town would have to pay. If we were VSMP, we would have to pay Martin to write a lawyer letter. But that's an example of a fee that you can incur as an authority that you are not collecting through when you get the permit to do the inspections and the reviews that.
Well, sure, but just like any inspection fee, the theory is the fee that's charged overall at the end of the day, while it may be revenue negative on one project, it's going to be revenue positive on another project. So, that would be a concern that I would have is if they charge, I think you get where I'm going there. So, if they charge $10,000 for a project that they only incurred $5,000 in cost for, but then the next project they charge $10,000 and they incurred $12,000 in cost for it, I would think that we would be able to negotiate maybe a breakdown of those fees. And hey, you made $5,000 here, you lost $2,000 there. You're netting that $3,000. Don't bill us. Those are my concerns going into an agreement like this. And not only that, but I would love to know if Prince William County's Stormwater Management Department has a procedural book or a policy book that states that they charge localities. Or is this just some guy that you met with or the person you met with that says, if we incur any extra fees, we're going to charge you?
That was the head of the department that said that.
That's fine, but does he have black and white that says this is what we do? Again, these are all questions that I have for Monday before we agree to do anything on that.
Vice Mayor, one of the things, every jurisdiction is dealing with this right now, because it's new regs across the state.
I care about one jurisdiction, Mr. Henshaw.
And I understand that, and that's actually what we're trying to look out for, is we would have a little bit more control if we decided to go to this. Yes, there is cost for training, cost for certification. The way we're looking at setting our program would actually be building upon what our erosion sediment control program currently is, which falls in the same line. It's just now you're talking about quality of stormwater runoff. And so looking at the size of the town, everything, that's the reason why we're kind of looking at the idea that it might be in our best interest to house the program in-house and build upon what we're already doing. Because otherwise, we do have to have a program.
But please don't mistake my questions and my directives and my concerns as acknowledgement that I'm not for this.
Okay.
But someone's got to speak up and say, did y'all think about this? And apparently some of what I've brought up has not been thought about. So that's why we're up here. So I'm not trying to say I'm against it. I'm not trying to say I'm for it. I'm saying I need more information.
And we'll get that for you.
Thank you.
Anything else, Holly? Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you for your time. Museum report, I think it's attached.
Will Denise be at the meeting to discuss this heart and vascular health screenings and what all? Because it's their time and potential dates. Does she need something back from us in regards to what dates we need or what dates we want?
Maybe we can get that.
Brian, did you move? She's supposed to be at next week's meeting.
Yeah, she can make next week's meeting. She apologizes for not being here tonight. I would defer to council if you would like her to come. If not, you all can tell us, and I'll relay the information to her.
Yeah, why don't you just relay Kat's
Sounds what
thoughts?
she's.
Right, she doesn't know. Her question is are we supposed to get feedback from you to give to her?
Right. Are the time and potential dates what the center, the cardiac center gave them is, yes, these are dates that were available.
That's what.
And
That's how.
we
That's how I read it, because it says we need to. It says the date must be selected by January 21st.
So I think this was open to all
I talked to her about
all
this
the
as well.
town employees. So maybe what we can do is just pass that out to the town employees, showing these 3 dates and what would be available, and then we go with the majority of whoever signed up for the majority. It looks like we're picking one of the dates, not all of them, obviously.
And that was a question as well. It's, okay, can certain, like if I can go on the 1st, but you can go on the 8th, is that an option?
Right. Fillers, do they just need one date for the town, or
Right.
or all 3 dates together?
Yeah,
Correct.
we can clarify that. That would be great.
Just to be clear, if you can get that answer, I don't necessarily see the need for Denise to come out late in the evening and incur any
Right.
expense to the town.
I don't need her here. That can be answered via an email.
Yeah, perhaps Denise can send an email out tomorrow or January 2nd.
We have our choice of those 3 dates, or you have to pick one and the majority date wins.
Yeah. Okay, moving along. Sean, plans report.
Nothing to add unless there's any questions.
Can I ask a question for the council with regard to policies with regard to staff? With there being a public hearing on the town-county boundary line adjustment or any of the issues in the agenda items, do you foresee there being any other additional questions you all would have, or you want Marshawn available for to answer it in the public?
With there being an actual public hearing, we may want him here.
Public hearings on just BLA,
The
right?
BLA, yeah.
I was going to schedule a work night just in the back anyway, so if you need to yell at me, I can come out and answer a question.
So this would be a time that you'd already be here.
I scheduled time to be here working on other things I need to get done.
Hopefully that's acceptable to everybody.
Marshawn, on the Haymarket Village Square, I just read that it said the plan also incorporates Dr. Payne's house at the corner. That's the one on that corner?
I actually missed the label. It's called the Gossam House. Is it the Gossam House? It's the
Gossam House.
Butler House. It's the one on the corner of
Behind Gossam.
Jefferson and,
Behind Gossam's offices.
yeah, behind where the asphalt guy is.
2 houses up from Pam's house.
Yes, right on the corner. It's got the hip roof, black shutters, porch on the front.
Boarded up windows.
Yes,
That's the only building that incorporates saving?
correct.
So that would include does this parcel, this development include the Colonel's house or the grade fenced in?
It would put 2 buildings on Jefferson Street in the place of the Colonel's house or the General's house. It would replace the corner building and the garage.
Fayette Street, you mean?
Yes, I'm sorry. I'm thinking loud. So, on Washington Street, the garage would come down and the corner house would come down, be 2 buildings in their stead. And then it'll be the third building, basically where Eddie's office is, where the Costello's, and then the Gossam House, or the Butler House on the corner.
What about the shed where the accounting service is?
Everything else would come down. The accounting services.
So everything comes down except the Butler house?
Correct.
Do you have the little, that the ARB was given?
Yeah, I can give that out.
Can you make copies and,
Sure, I can. As soon as I'm done here, I can make
Okay.
copies for it.
5 structures of varying heights. Do you know, just out of curiosity, how many stories? Max 2 or 3?
There are 2 stories. A couple of them have fenestrations that will be similar to 3 stories, but they're all 2 stories. First floor retail, second floor office. It's a neat plan. It's much better than the carriage house effect that the other, or barn effect that was. So,
And the firehouse, what is the proposed? I understand that
Wine
they've got
bar.
parking issues.
yeah, wine barn and bakery.
We got a wine bar and a bakery.
The gentleman that owns the winery just west of Barrel Oak on 66. Apparently you can see his winery. His name is Sergio.
Yeah.
He owns several wineries and he wants to sell his products out of the firehouse.
I believe he's one of the ones that owns Quattragumba, correct?
It would be a retail boutique, or it would be an on-premises consumption?
Good question. So he would have to file for his ABC licenses if he was selling alcohol. We'd probably define him as a restaurant if they're going to serve on the site, but that's something we probably have to do.
I'm just curious. I mean, obviously, he would have to facilitate whatever licensing and permits would be necessary to operate his business. So I'm just curious. Wine bar and bakery, I didn't know.
Yeah, wine bar, we were looking at selling it under retail.
Okay.
Sorry.
We already have one, okay.
A wine bar and bakery? Cupcake Heaven?
Cafe
Oh,
Blanc.
Cafe Bar, yeah. But they're more of a restaurant than just a bakery, right?
Yeah, they're more primary for a restaurant.
Yeah, their primary is a restaurant service versus a wine boutique. I was just
You
curious.
can get wine there, but it's not a wine bar.
Right, and that's why, when you phrase it wine bar, I didn't know if it's sampling and testing.
Right.
Like some of the local microbreweries that are popping up in Manassas and such, where they're brewing their own beer on tap, and they have on-premises consumption, but they also have off-premises taking away growlers and stuff like that. I was just curious if they were going to be both.
Interestingly enough, I think Manassas recently had to better define what that was, because usually when you serve alcohol, you have to serve a certain amount of food with it.
Yeah, the microbreweries went through Delegate Marshall to get the microbrewery laws changed in 2012 and 2011. So I was just curious how that all fit.
I think because they've still at the kind of the 10,000 foot level, I imagine once they start getting into the weeds, then we'll have to better define how we're going to fit them under the ordinance, or if we have to amend the ordinance.
The Haven and Haymarket Crossing. That's directly across the hospital?
If you go kind of where the new hospital is, if you go off kind of the northwest corner, you'll be there.
So you make a left on Heathcote at the stoplight to go to the hospital?
Correct.
And that development is all there? Wow, 316 units.
And we have, I
Are those
mentioned to you,
townhouses or single families?
Multifamily.
Condos?
multifamily condos or rentals.
So what's like just like what's already over there is the two level stacked condos. That's what's over there right now, the Astor Haven Court and all that.
Similar. I don't know if it'll be the exact same product, but yes, kind of higher, same high density type of development.
So 316 isn't that big of a deal. They're stacked two on top of each other.
And then one across south of the Walmart site is the active adult community. That's all attached. That's townhomes and single family detached.
So did that change from, where was it, a year or two before they originally came out?
No, I mentioned to you it was the plan amendment. They had to first do a comprehensive plan amendment. That's all zoned commercial. So they got the amendment approved, and now they're just coming in with the rezoning proposal.
Okay.
I think we're starting to see a lot of spin-off of the hospital demand for multifamily. We don't have a lot of it in the area. So, and old people buy hospitals apparently makes money. No offense. The last thing I reported.
So do lots of children, because pediatricians, they work at hospitals, just to cover yourself there.
I've stroked a lot of checks in that emergency room over there.
Okay.
This is the end of this era. Come next week, this will no longer be here.
So December beard is gone.
Yeah, no shave November, went into December, and now that I can start tasting my lunch an hour after I've eaten it, it's time to go. So,
Next time, shave off. December
enjoy
beard.
your New Year.
Thank you, sir. Town manager's report.
Mr. Mayor and Council. I'm going to try to get through this really quick. I want to come back with you all about the temporary off-premises signs that came up at the last council meeting. After additional research, we've determined that the issue basically does relate to zoning and signage. Essentially, when you research other jurisdictions, you found that really temporary off-premises signs really refer to billboards throughout most ordinance. So in discussing this with Roshan and everything, we kind of said, it seems like the best thing to do is just not allow temporary off-premises signs. That could be something that's done easily within our ordinance as it already is, because it's not really addressed. It basically would eliminate you all getting asked to do off-premises signs. We just handle this from an administrative course of action. However, I think the big thing is, just so you know, this would not affect anything that's already more of a permanent off-premises sign. These would be for the businesses that sit off, say, Washington Street. Those signs are more of a permanent nature, grandfathered in. Wouldn't affect those. It also wouldn't affect anyone who's setting up a special event sign, like if you're doing a blood drive here at the town office and they set set up signs out front. That's an off-premises sign because it's their building, but it wouldn't affect them. They are renting this space. Same thing with any of our special events. Anytime you have sponsors come up and they set up the perimeter and they have the sponsored events, the sponsor itself is utilizing the space. Who it would affect is apparently there is an issue with setting up A-frame signs on Sundays or during the weekends. To address this, we would be contacting those organizations and just letting them know that this is actually technically a violation of the ordinance, and that, basically just cease doing it. If they continue to do it, then we'll follow the procedures laid out in the zoning ordinance. I'd be happy to answer any other questions. I think just basically from our research, we just kind of found out that, temporary off-premises signs just aren't really something most jurisdictions allow. So.
Okay. Mr. Aiken?
Would that impact the HOA that has the little tiny A-frame signs that go up for breakfast with Santa and stuff like that advertised?
I would say it's more of an interpretation from the zoning administrator. If you really want to talk about HOA, the off-premises portion would be if they brought their A-frame sign, brought it down here and put it on our property. If they're setting it in the area that is considered their property, it's not really as much of an issue. Okay. It's just like, technically speaking, if the restaurant was to put out an A-frame sign out on the sidewalk's not technically their property. It's technically right away. But we're not going to be taking that down. That's not what we mean by an off-premises.
Okay. Mr. Tobias?
This came about as part of the discussion last month for the church advertising Christmas Eve. And then based on what you just said about restaurant, sidewalk, et cetera, how does that not apply to like Gainesville Dance that puts out that sandwich board?
The Gainesville Dance would be in violation of the ordinance as it currently.
They're already in violation of the ordinance.
Correct.
I know Marshall has notified them.
Yeah, so we just need to follow up on enforcement. But yes,
So basically, this is just going to say that we won't allow people to put signs on our property, et cetera, et cetera.
well, in general, really, in general, like to go back to the HOA example, if they brought their sign down here, or a church or any other organization creating signs and puts it up on this property or any other property throughout the town, that technically would be a violation. Keep it with that being kept in mind. It's one of those things you would enforce, but these things happen. For example, like yard sale signs. That would be a temporary off-premises sign. You have to use caution of judgment with regard to, did they put it up on a Friday when they had the yard sale? Then did they take it down on Saturday? So that's a different story than if they put it up and they just leave it there. That's really what we're looking at as far with regard to enforcement. What we're trying to defer on is really organizations coming to you all to ask you if you can put it up. If they can put it up here and here. And then anyone who's a habitual offender putting it up. If Gainesville Dance Studio, which here is consistently putting up a sign that's not on their premises or not part of a location where they are frequently located at, then that would be an offense. Okay. Moving on, the Code of Ethics and Standards of Conduct. Rebecca and Steve and I were able to meet this evening. Prior to this meeting, we were going to be making a few little tweaks to language, and I do anticipate bringing a draft to you all to review on Monday. With that being said, to go into discussion during for the February work session. Okay.
Just for our review.
Yes, it would just basically be so you all can read it and then be prepared to discuss it when we come to the February work session. Budget, I'll be beginning the budget process, starting by communicating with all the various departments and various boards with their initial budget needs, and I'm hoping to bring a draft budget to you by March 4th. Standards of operation and procedures. I have received some general comments. I'm going to be making editorial changes, but I've yet to receive really any handwritten comments or anything to that effect. For the sake of time, I would propose that let me go through and do a little bit more editing, and then I can just bring back the final draft and we can go from there. These are much more of what I would consider a good bit of them are internal policies. Some of them are out procedures that would affect outward business, but my biggest goal is just to make sure that we're operating efficiently. It kind of raises, Vice Mayor's Bias's point. If we're going to have policies and procedures, that's how we're going to handle any of our contracts or any of the business we do during executive sessions. You should have it down. You should have it in policies. And I'd rather get it in one document source where we can all refer to it. So that's really the goal. Okay. That's all I have.
Skipped over a big,
Oh, I'm sorry.
but I got lots of questions.
Sure.
VDOT meeting with bike lanes.
Oh, yes. Sorry about that. We had a meeting, Holly, myself, and Martin came. We did have a meeting. Part of the reason I didn't really include that one is because we were waiting to hear back from VDOT.
You didn't include it, but you included it.
Well, it's in here. I'm trying to give you a briefing, and I'm just trying. When I do the oral part, I try to just hit on the hot ones, hot topics. What it was is basically VDOT is going to get back with us to see if there's a possibility to restripe the intersection out here, which then could possibly, and it's tight between curb to curb, but it's a possibility to do dedicated turn lanes on Washington Street, which would then may help a little bit with the traffic flow through that intersection. What it would do is that would take out the bike lanes. It would take it. We would utilize the space that's currently in the dedicated bike lanes. VDOT is of the mindset you could reinforce the bike lanes by using signage that basically bicyclists still have right of way on the road. But it does take out any of the issues that are going around and using the bike lanes. Actually, it would use all of the travel lanes to basically create a through lane, a turn lane, and the westbound through lane.
Okay. Did any consideration be given, I think it was Chuck that mentioned about having these cones, not cones, but these, not a pylon, but border markers.
Yeah. Yeah, we discussed that, but it's not, from a safety standpoint, it's not a viable option for people.
Okay.
Was there any discussion as to the timing of the lights, just doing one section at north, let north go, let south go, let east go, let west go? That would solve all problems, not just east-west.
Well, the truth of the matter is that I've talked about with VDOT on numerous occasions. One of the process they're going to do when they're looking at the possibility of restriping is they are going to help to do a little bit of modeling with regard to that. That, from what I understand, according to them, has been looked at and modeled. And the truth, it seems like it would be a relief, but it actually creates more of a traffic nightmare.
But it's never been tried. That's the problem.
Well, that's what they're doing in the modeling. They're simulating the action. So,
And you would think that the trip factor would then help eliminate the concerns that it wouldn't work, because if you hadn't tripped it, then you could just go to the 3 sides versus all 4.
I mean, if you would like to, I can get with VDOT representatives. They'd be happy
I would, because you
talk
could
to you
have
all. I know,
Supervisor Canlin come up and express this. This is our number one thing that we think that this idea will work. What's the idea of not putting it for a trial 30 days, 60 days, just to see, Mr. Tobias?
When's the last time that VDOT has done a traffic count at that intersection? Especially given all the construction traffic on 29 and Gainesville area and just that whole catastrophe and nightmare that is up there. Has a lot of people coming through. Perhaps their analysis and their modeling has been done historically and not recently. And therefore, while the ongoing construction is going on, maybe they need to reconsider another option. I mean, those are comments that we can maybe ask them. I mean, I haven't seen any of those little traffic counting strips in a long time.
Historically, they do a count every 2 years, but that doesn't necessarily mean...
Yeah, I can tell you that I haven't ran over one of those things in over 2 years.
But, that would be one of the questions that I'd like to see them answer is when they last did a traffic study or traffic count there. And if they can't do it, then maybe we'll ask you to sit out there one afternoon and they can study. But in another question that is more directed towards Martin in regards to the bike lanes and enforcement.
going around, therefore, you had mentioned, and you had sent emails back in November regarding the enforcement of that. And there was a question brought up as to how a citation would be written for that enforcement. Have you or Ms. Spitzer, Spidler, discussed that with Chief Root, and have they come to any kind of consensus?
No.
Okay.
We haven't had that
Please.
discussion. No, I haven't heard anything from Chief Root about that. And the issue there, the question is, is your question what it wasn't charged at, or what could it be charged with?
My question is, well, my original question that you answered back November the 5th, I believe, in an email, was the enforceability of vehicles utilizing the paved surface of the road to go around somebody who's making a left turn, even though the lanes are marked bicycles. Right. And your interpretation at that time, if I recall correctly, if not, I'll forward the email, I'll get the email back out, was that it's only enforceable should there be a bicyclist present, or should the car hit the curb, or were there signage, actual signs, not just these paint markings, but signs stipulating that it was a bike for bike use only.
You're exactly right.
So the concern that apparently one of the police officers had and addressed with Chief Root was whether or not they can cite it for having two vehicles abreast of each other on a public road, utilizing two vehicles in the same lane of traffic versus the driving on the shoulder, since it's not really a shoulder, since it's... Right. So Jim was supposed to have discussed that with someone at your firm. I'm assuming it was Ms. Taylor, but I know that when I asked him about this, I think he said that he was going to look to write something about what his officers, how his officers would write citations for that, or whether or not they would enforce that particular section.
I've got some questions. So,
Can he answer my question first?
sure,
I mean, that's just...
Sure. The answer to your question is that if a car is stopped to turn left, you can go around it safely. It's not illegal.
Even though two vehicles in the same lane of travel at the time.
That is correct.
Or not correct. Someone needs to explain that to the police department.
let's look at that. I mean,
Because their interpretation is
do you really
that
think that it's safe for these cars to zoom around?
No,
Well, I don't know that they've been zooming around.
it's not. Because I'll tell you how this intersection is. You got this guy making a left, this one here going to make a right. Next thing, you're going to go through here and bang, you hit him.
Yeah.
Right.
I almost got it.
Well, then that becomes the, to paraphrase Councilwoman Artist, that's natural selection. Idiots being idiots. So, but if the state code says it's not enforceable, then it's not a citable offense, given any reckless nature of doing such or high rate of speed, zooming around, if you would. Typically when that happens, cars are stuck behind the car making a left. Just like this evening, I experienced it. The car that was making a left went forward in the intersection, trying to give me enough room to get my truck back. But because of the curbing, my truck doesn't have enough room. I have no choice but to move. So if Martin is saying that it's not an enforceable standard, given the absence of a bicycle, then doesn't our law firm then have a duty to instruct our department on issuance of citations for that offense?
I did. We do communicate with them.
Could we re-communicate it with officially? Because as my email to you stated November the 7th, it was brought to the clerk's attention that someone was cited for such an offense and convicted in such an offense, and your assumption was that Ms. Spidler was out of the room perhaps at the time. Obviously you weren't there, but my concern is going forward, the enforcement of that, or lack thereof, the enforcement of that, offense, if it's not an offense. And I would think that our law firm should give a directive to our police department. Because, unfortunately, police officers don't know all the laws. They can't possibly know all the laws, and laws change.
We got all hands up. So, I answered your question successfully that we can go around the table now?
For now.
Okay, great. My question to you is, this has happened, there's been several convictions on this, that the judge has deemed that this going around was illegal, correct? There's been several.
That's my understanding.
Okay, great. We're going to go ahead.
She was first.
Okay.
Giving the north, south, east, west, one light cycle per each sign would solve all of that, just say.
I concur. North, south, east, west, going, yeah.
Yeah, one direction at a time, going at each time,
Just coming up,
will solve
coming up Old Carroll
all
Street,
of this
you're lucky
problem.
to get 2 car spaces at that light.
All of it.
Yeah.
Yes, right.
I'd just like to get council's thoughts on just a simple question. Should we allow people to make those turns or not? I mean, currently, should we put up a sign? Should we do something to make it enforceable?
That's VDOT's decision in the state code of Virginia. Unless we, from my understanding, unless we take over the maintenance of our roads.
My other question.
Virginia state code that says it's not.
Or do we push them to do that? I mean, do we take a more
Contact
active
doesn't
role?
follow.
I mean, do we believe it should be allowed? Do we believe it shouldn't be allowed? That's all I'm asking.
That's for the people who
The
get
go
elected
around,
in general
no,
assembly.
left turn, yeah.
I mean, it's not. Is it potentially dangerous? Yup. Is driving 35 and 25 potentially dangerous? Yes, but that's a violation of law. But going around someone who is inched up to allow you to go around if traffic is oncoming, you as a driver in the state roads of the Commonwealth of Virginia take the onus of caution on yourself when you decide to go around someone and not bang into somebody who's banging a left going the opposite direction. I mean, if someone were to hit someone at the time that they were going around the vehicle, my understanding is that they would be the ones at fault of that accident, and they would have to suffer the consequences of their actions, i.e. natural selection. My concern is that regardless of whether or not judges have convicted in tried in absentia, or somebody pleading no contest because they didn't know they shouldn't have gotten a ticket, or Miss Spittler, who had been made aware of an email on November the 5th, was outside of the courtroom to not interfere at the time. Regardless of all that being said, I mean, there's been times where judges have used certain leeway that has been critiqued and criticized and later overturned. So my only point of bringing this up is, could our law firm, who we pay to convict and try our cases, make sure that they are only convicting and trying cases that are convictable, and that they make some sort of discussions with the chief and the deputy chief to trickle down the rank and file that you need to know what you're doing when you're writing these tickets.
Okay. Let me rephrase my question.
Good.
Should we take a stand on whether or not to ask VDOT to put up signs making it illegal
To do what?
to make those turns?
To go around someone? Not to make a turn, to go around someone.
It would be, we could ask VDOT to put up a sign. That's what I understand you saying is, keep the bike lane and say, no vehicles are allowed to use the bike lane. Where's that? Whatever
Something like that.
sign is. I don't know that such a sign exists. When we met with VDOT, I asked them about those signs. Those two big people hadn't done any research on the issue, and so we would have wanted a more definitive answer, but their initial reaction was they weren't aware of any such sign. So we have to research that issue and then see if VDOT would be willing.
What about the aspect of crossing over a solid white line? By going around, you are crossing over a solid white line.
The definition.
Sorry.
The definition of a bike lane is that it's for the preferential use of bicycles. So it doesn't say exclusive use of bicycles. If it said exclusive use of bicycles, I'd be right there. And as a bicyclist myself, I prefer that. But it's not what the law provides, unfortunately.
Well, then maybe it's that leeway of allowing these officers to write these tickets because it presents an unsafe condition. And I think there is probably a majority, without even looking at the council, that is an unsafe condition when you allow cars to go around.
We're not disputing
right,
that, Mr. President.
whether
We're not
either
disputing
right
whether
or
or not
not
it's
to do it.
safe. It's legal or not legal.
Yeah.
We cannot, just like we cannot tell the chief of police that his officers need to write 47 tickets a day. we cannot tell his officers to continue to write citations for things that are not traffic offenses.
Well, obviously, the judge,
That's common sense. You cannot tell your police officers to write tickets for offenses that aren't offenses. I get where you're going with this, David. You're taking this to the next level. I'm not saying it's safe. I'm not saying I condone it. I'm not saying that we shouldn't necessarily contact VDOT and see if there's some other method of enforcement, or contact Delegate Marshall to see if he would incorporate something into his legislative agenda. I'm just saying that we need to have our law firm, who we pay a lot of money to convict people of crimes, instruct the people who are writing these tickets that, hey, we can't convict people of these crimes. You need to stop writing these tickets because it's not a crime. Unless they're going to testify that a bicyclist is present at that time. Because if there's no bicyclist, first of all, if there's a bicyclist present, the odds are the guy's not going to go around because he's going to hit the bicyclist. Then he's going to get charged with vehicular manslaughter. So, I totally agree with what you're saying. The point of this complete soliloquy is that the State Code of Virginia does not allow you to do what you just said to do. And by you making that statement just makes me laugh. Because at the same time you're making that statement, you might as well tell Chief to tell all his officers they got to write 37 tickets a night, because we can't do that either.
well, we should allow him to do his job is what I think
We can, but what I'm saying is there's confusion about that part of his job. He himself is confused. He himself, who leads the department, and his officers are confused because they're writing, again, no one officer knows every law on in the Code of Virginia. I'm sorry, they don't. You can have the best state trooper in the state. He's not going to know every single law. That's why they all carry code books. That's why they all have the code on their phone. And that's why when they're charging somebody with something, they might call down the dispatch and say, give me the code section for X, Y, Z. What I'm saying and what I'm suggesting and what I think the attorney is agreeing with, I think, is that a directive, i.e. a memorandum, needs to come down from the people that convict people of these crimes and prosecute people for these crimes, or offenses, not really a crime, but an offense, that we can't write people for this. This should stop. And if there's no workaround to it that Jim can't come up with that satisfies Martin and his colleagues, then they need to stop doing it. Because otherwise, you're going to be sitting at a traffic light waiting to go straight to your house in Green Hill Crossing for extra time because you can't go around the dude to go too straight. And I think you're probably a safe enough driver to determine whether you can pass that person legally or not without hitting the curb, without hitting a bicyclist, or without hitting an oncoming car.
usually it's blocked. Your vision is blocked is the problem.
Maybe you should buy a bigger vehicle. My vision's never blocked. I can always see.
It should also be the person turning left, not moving and sitting in the middle of an intersection, allowing people to pass if they were actually sitting where they should be.
That potentially is the criminal traffic offense.
If they're sitting where they should be to make that left turn, you couldn't get by anyway.
Exactly. That should be the person that's cited because they're obstructing an intersection.
Right. Just saying.
But again, my whole point of thought process
Can we move on, please?
Yes.
Martin needs to address this with us.
I think we beat it to death.
Well, that's because David wanted to tell our cops to enforce a law they can't enforce.
I don't think I made any instructions at all, Mr. Tobias.
You asked. No, I said you wanted to. I didn't say you instructed.
No.
You said, can we tell them to
Let's
keep
move on,
signing?
please.
Should we revisit
Mr.
it?
Mr. Hinshaw, I think we went back to VDOT, but we're done.
Yeah, I mean, I will follow up with VDOT and see if we can get someone in here. I will tell you that there is a long-term solution without continuing. There is a way to get dedicated turn lanes because we have some land in Payne Lane, if that develops, that have some land so you can get dedicated turn lanes on both sides if they can
Only
make
on
it
this
work
side of
more.
the street.
Correct.
It doesn't do much for the old bank building and the red building.
Right. Well,
Or north-south.
yeah. Well, no, that's what I'm
North
saying.
south.
They're looking at north-south to see if it's a possibility.
I think it's just something we're going to have to continue to live with anytime soon until or unless they decide to put a four-way stop or something. Which they did traffic studies when they installed the light because we used to not have a light.
They're doing it just down the road.
They are. It's great for sledding.
So nothing else. Treasurer Renee, thank you for
Police reports?
Oh, sorry. Apologize for the police report.
Mr. Aiken, could you request that Chief himself be present on Monday. He should be in town anyway for a already scheduled meeting at 5:30.
I'm not going to write it down, I got to put it in here.
Fair enough. But I've requested he to be present for this report in January, if possible. Turns out he'll be in town at 5:30.
How much was the grant that was awarded?
$30,000.
That's awesome.
Speaking of grant, are we working in conjunction with the Treasury Department to make sure that we delineate where that money is received into so that we can then allocate it accordingly?
Yeah, I'll show you.
Okay, Renee?
Okay, I'd like to walk you through the financials quickly. If we can start at page 7FA, the summary.
66 packet page?
Yes. It's got that. It's got that. So under revenues, that third column is the budget year-to-date up through December. And the next is the actual through December. So you'll see that we're under budget a little, but it's all the local taxes and the revenue from the Commonwealth. That's just timing difference. We don't have our December payments yet. And the other is the streetscape. So we're really right on target there. The expenditures, again, we're under budget, which is good. And the big flag there again is the streetscape. And we're over in admin a little bit. Then in the third section, Jay wanted me to list every line item that was over budget, so I did that. But first, I would like to take you through the financial statements. I think it gives you a better picture, and we can go back to that. If we could skip to 7FC, the statement of financial position, that's our balance sheet. So these were done as of December 27th. So the total in the checking account is $544,000. Total in the CDs and money markets is $1.2 million. Total in the checking savings now is $1.7 million. The receivables to date that were owed $350,000. If you go to the next page, you'll see Steve had asked about this last time. I now have these financial statements tied to the audited statements. So I put in all of our fixed assets, land, building and improvements, and under each line item, the accumulated depreciation is subtracted. So we have the infrastructure, museum equipment, police vehicles. Total fixed assets is $3 million, and the rental property is separate. That's $1 million. Total fixed assets is $4.2 million. Then under liabilities, if you go to the second page, here are payroll liabilities. Another thing I added was accrued leave, because you think it's hard to tell the cost of an employee on your financial statements or in several different accounts, but accrued leave, it's important to show that as a liability, because you think, okay, they're going to take their vacation and that's included in their salary, unless they put in their notice, and then you owe that above and beyond their salary. So if everyone were to quit right now, that's what you would owe. And again, some of the payroll expenses, health and MSA is negative because we paid that a month in advance. Security deposits. I also got the general obligation bonds on there. And you might notice that this is a really, really healthy balance sheet. The total accounts receivable is $350, and total accounts payable is only $18. And this general obligation bonds, $1.8 million. Our liquid cash almost wipes that out, $1.7 million. So this is a healthy balance sheet. Then Jay, you were asking me about the restricted funds. Next under the fund balance, I've separated it, unrestricted and restricted. So you'll see I have the fire funds there. And the $30,000 was I think we just received it Friday, so it wasn't coded correctly. I will put that here in the restricted section. And the way that works is, it's earmarked here, restricted for that purpose. And as we spend the money, it goes out of restricted and into revenue. So we don't count it as revenue until we spend it. because theoretically, if you don't spend it, you're going to have to return it, according to the grant. So it's a little complicated, but this is the way we're supposed to show it on the financials. So now, if you go back to the statement of revenue and expenditures, that was 7FB. And what I did differently this time, instead of putting the budget, the yearly budget, I put the budget through December. So what you would expect to see if we were right on budget, the percentage in the third column should be 100%. And I didn't, what we were doing before was taking the budget and dividing it into 12 even increments. And this time I took it exactly what we would expect for each line item through December. In other words, we'd expect more for snow. We'd expect all of the audit in the fall, maybe more insurance payments in the spring. So Jen and I went through every line item, and this is basically what we would expect to have through December. So you'll see property taxes is right there, almost 100%. Other local taxes, again, sales tax receipts, we didn't get the December payment, so that will be higher, and also with cigarette tax. So we're really right on target there. Under permits, fees, and licenses, we're doing really well on permits and inspection fees. It's double what we would have expected. Also, motor vehicle licenses. Fines, public safety. If you go to the next page. Now, if you see that second line, Department of Fire Programs, as soon as that was $17,000 there we received in restricted money. As soon as we start spending that money, then you'll see it as revenue there. So even it shows total revenue for Commonwealth 87. That doesn't include that $17,000. So we're actually doing very well there. Then under miscellaneous, we're also doing very well. Police citations is double what we would have expected by now. Recovered cost, that $6,000 we got, and you'll see the events cost was about $5,000, which was over budget and expenses, but then we received $6,000 to pay for that. So that was good. And then interest on bank deposits. We have two accounts for interest on bank deposits. One is for our capital fund and one is for the general fund. And the only reason that the interest is so low here is we realize the sweep interest we should be coding here. And then if you look at the interest on bank deposits later, further down the capital one, that's over. So as soon as we make that entry for the sweep interest, they'll both be on target. Then rent, also we're right on target. Now we go down to expenses in the town council. It's about at 100. Oh, I'm sorry.
69.
Yep. Okay, I'm still on the first page, the second page.
For the sake of timing, I think we're all, I hesitate to speak out of turn, but I think we're all okay on the synopsis here.
Okay.
A couple of glaring things on page 1.
Okay.
Page 1 being package page what?
I don't know. 66. The line items over the second quarter appropriations, there's a couple of items that I would like Brian to work with each department on to address why they're so far over budget.
Well, that's...
And to give us... Go right ahead.
Oh, sorry, Jay. That's the reason that I was showing this. If you...
Oh, no, I get it where it breaks down.
Now, the totals...
I'd like to ask my question.
Okay.
My question, I can read where the numbers come from. I get that. I'm a numbers guy. The question is, what are we going to do to make it not be over budget for the rest of the year? What are we going to do to trim the fat? What are we going to do to let the police department know and Steve know to go to Jim and say, hey, you're way over budget in this category. Why? And how are you going to make sure this doesn't stay? And if it does stay, what are we going to do to fix it? I.e., it's way early for us to be experiencing something that's 500% over budget. And the question is why, glaringly, why are we 500% over budget? And are we going to be 1,000% over budget in June?
So I get what you're saying, what you're trying to say. I can do the math and I can figure out where we're over budget. The glaring items that I'd like Brian to look at and come back with some information is the accounting services, legal services, police department wages and overtime, anything above $1,000 over budget.
Jay, what I wanted to point out, if you look on page 4, the total police department, it's 96% under budget.
I got it.
And so what I'm looking at in the police department, and I was going to point this out, that in all the other sections we're at budget or under, but the police department, even though we're under budget, the line items are all over the place. And what that's telling me, if we could get the police department involved in the budget process, so that they owned it and they were accountable for it. And Brian is giving him this report. So when he gave his report, he would explain to you why they were over and under. Right now, they're not even looking at this, and I think they're not involved and they're not interested.
Those answers.
What was that?
That's why my question was to Brian, was come back to those answers.
I think if they were...
We have a line item of 505% over budget.
I think it wasn't budgeted correctly. The total budget...
I know that's what you think.
Yeah.
Come back to me with an answer. Let's find out for sure.
If you look at the line items, they're all over the place.
I think you're doing a fantastic job. I'm not arguing with you.
The only point I was going to make is I don't think that the public safety budget was done correctly because none of the items are all over the place.
I agree with that. But because it wasn't done correctly, there's problems. And because it wasn't done correctly and there's problems, we need to make sure that we don't continue to have problems through the rest of fiscal year 2014.
They need to own it. I think they need to be involved.
I think you and I are now saying the same thing.
Yeah.
That's why I asked Brian to come back with answers.
But everything else,
And
everything is
you and I are going to
under...
have a discussion about this later.
Any other further comments or concerns? The one loan that we have that was like 6%, I think last year at the time we were talking about it. And, have you looked at any of those type of things or where we were as far as our debt? And is there a way to restructure or to save the money there?
That's a priority for January. I didn't get that to that. Yeah, this month. But that's definitely banking concerns and working with that. Yeah.
Okay, great. All right.
Just one follow-up, you'll see the Haymarket College Square, the thing that given to you. If there's any questions, Marcia can answer that if you have spatial questions.
Question on this letter, Brian, the signature company.
Yeah, I asked to pass this out. This was information that I thought it was important that the council see. Martin and Brian are working with John regarding with concerns that he brings out. That's the reason why it's on everyone's desk.
All I was going to add is basically I will be addressing this issue. We're actually, in a lot of ways, we're addressing it. There's some problems with the way the procedures, the fact that they're just not really clearly defined. So I want to make sure before we move forward with any building projects that we have a much more clearly defined process. That's part of where all the breakdown of this entire issue came. I would not recommend us we should address it, but I don't recommend us doing any refunds or anything to that effect. The issue has been addressed also with SCE, and so basically I've been working a good bit of hours on trying to address a lot of these issues, which were actually, I kind of got before John had sent it.
All right.
So are we going to get feedback from you on this within the next week or so? Or?
My hope and goal is actually I'm really trying to work on the project that's at hand and get that where it needs to be. We're almost at. We'll be there tomorrow.
This is for the extension for Next Level Fitness, correct?
Correct.
Which I was told today was 2 weeks out.
Well, the finishing up the work will be 2 weeks out, the actual finished work, but we can get the owner of Next Level where he needs to be with a temporary CO tomorrow based upon our inspector and satisfied that we will put a 30-day to finish up the work. But what I was going to say is that basically we're looking at it from two different perspectives. There's the owner of Next Level Fitness and the concerns that that has, and then there's the bigger picture, which is something we're working on with regard to how we're going to process building permits, applications, and plan submittals. There just really wasn't a very identified process that I was following. And so we are working on improving that process throughout the whole entire, across the board. Basically all the way from the way SEE handles it. They basically handled it the way they saw it best. And it really should be us telling them this is how we need to do this. Okay. And so that's what I'm going to do. So what I'm planning on doing is basically I will draft a letter in response to Mr. Lombardozzi, and I will include you all. I will get you a copy of that letter.
Okay. Anything to be added to the agenda to go around the table? Steve? No. Okay. I do have one thing I wanted to add is the status of the collection of the previous imposed fine by council. So if you could please add that. Mayor Luke? Ms. Kenworthy? Mr. Tobias?
Back to the SCE thing, because I wasn't finished with that, but David didn't care. Is this another extension of the issues we discussed previously in closed session? Is this another facet of that? And if so, is it time for us to look elsewhere for, I mean, first and foremost, I think their bills are exorbitant. I approve the invoices and we have to pay them, but, I think their bills are extremely high. We've had numerous complaints. We have numerous concerns. We have long-standing tenants in the town, and I understand that it's a he said, and there's some issues on both sides of the fence, but at what point does council, or do you recommend that council explore other options for this service? Because, quite frankly, I'm tired of hearing the problems with this entity, specifically this entity and this representative of this entity who is, by extension, a representative of the town. I got an earful this afternoon, today, about this project and the delays and the permits, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And, if this, it just seems to be a continued theme.
My take on this is honestly, I'm about at my final draw myself. I've been monitoring the situation, and as far as I can say, I can also express that the president for SCE is also very, very concerned as well. I think that he has had enough of these issues come up as well, that he realizes that at some point it's going to be the straw that broke the camel's back, so to speak. And so the way that we're trying to address this is basically, I feel like those are very important concerns that I'm watching and monitoring very closely. One of the things I think we're at a severe disadvantage because, in everything I can tell, we do not have a very clear defined process. I think it's been handled. It's always been handled in a certain way, and that doesn't make that wrong. We just don't have it down. And so, in this particular case, I think that's why it's been delayed and delayed and delayed, because I don't think these things were very, very clear. And so that's what I want to fix more than anything. At the same time, we will be monitoring the situation that all of you have been probably heard about or have witnessed in other shapes and forms. And if we have another flare-up or another issue, I will be coming to you all to make recommendations as to the way we should do it. I don't think that that's the way that we want to represent this town.
You have started to look at other options. I mean,
we are looking at other options and ways to improve our procedures.
Right.
And that would be one option, but there's several different directions to go.
Okay.
And talking and having established a working relationship with our current consulting company, I think that they would be very interested in seeing how they could remedy the situation if they needed to.
All right. There's no other further action items or additions. Thank you all for your time.